Miami is the favorite to land one of the biggest names in the transfer portal. Alex Donno of Locked On Canes joining me here on Locked On College Football. Damian Martinez has been someone that raised a lot of eyebrows when this transfer portal talk all kind of started, before it officially opened. He's been tied to the Hurricanes. What's the latest?
Well, yeah, he's been on my radar for the past few days, Spencer, because like you mentioned, it was reported days before he officially entered the portal that Damian Martinez would become available. This is the exact sort of player Miami is looking for, Spencer, because it's an interesting situation with the running back room heading into next season for Miami, because Miami's top running back, the guy who would be the featured back, is Mark Fletcher. I think it's a little bit uncertain when he's going to be back from injury. Suffered an injury in Miami's bowl game in late December. I'm not sure if he would be ready to start the beginning of the season, August 31st against Florida, or if it might take him more time. One of Miami's other top running backs, who's been their most consistent guy for the past 2 years, Henry Parrish Jr., announced a few weeks ago, it was announced he was going to be entering the transfer portal, and he has done so officially. Miami also loses a running back in Trevante Citizen, who has been so snake bit by injuries. He hasn't actually played yet in 2 seasons out of high school. So we don't really know what Miami had with Citizen, but at the same time, he does have that big frame to be a featured back if he can ever get back to that physically. So with these situations, Miami needs a guy like Damian Martinez, someone who's proven he can create yards after contact, someone who's got the combination of size, speed, and power and durability. That's another thing that Martinez has showed during his time at Oregon State. And something you know as well as I do, Spencer, having covered Mario Cristobal at Oregon, and now I'm covering Cristobal at Miami, he likes to have those big, powerful backs, because what Miami has left on the roster, aside from Mark Fletcher, who's big, but he's recovering from injuries, Miami has a lot of smaller, quicker guys that don't really fit the bill of players who are able to take that sort of consistent punishment. The other part of Damian Martinez is, and I know that he's likely to command a hefty NIL price tag, and he's earned that with the way he's played over the last couple of years. Miami wants to be really aggressive to try to bring in difference makers, and I know we're gonna talk about Cam Ward a little bit later. We'll circle back to him, but with Miami feeling like they have a bona fide stud now at quarterback in Ward, and they only have him for 1 season, they want to try to maximize that 1 season. And if it means bringing in some high-profile players from other programs who hit the portal, try to surround Ward with as much talent as possible. I think that's something they're looking to do.
Yeah, I think Martinez is one of the best running backs available in the transfer portal. I think there's a case to be made. He's the most proven, productive running back that you could get out there. And you mentioned Mario Cristobal in his time at Oregon. Of course, I'm very familiar with that. And, the 2 years when Cristobal had his best seasons, that wasn't the COVID year, his lead running back was a guy by the name of CJ Verdell, who by all accounts was a solid and productive running back. And I think of Damian Martinez as just a better version of Verdell. He is bigger, he's stronger, I think he's a little bit more agile, but they are physical, downhill, one-cut sort of runners. And that very much fits with what Cristobal likes to do running the football. And if you put, like, RIP Pac-12 here to the extreme, if you put Cam Ward and Damian Martinez in the same backfield, that is a lethal tandem to have behind center if you're the Hurricanes. I like what you said about the all-in factor with Cam Ward, because they only have him for the 1 season. But where else could Miami be looking in the transfer portal? Because you mentioned the running backs who are no longer with the team. Have there been any other departures from the Hurricanes, and anybody else that they might want to bring in?
Yeah, so they did lose a very popular backup quarterback. Jakari Brown is entering the transfer portal. I don't think they're going to replace him with a quarterback. I think they're going to use that scholarship and roster spot on a different position, because Miami has 4 scholarship quarterbacks remaining. It's unfortunate to lose Brown, because I feel like he's got a higher ceiling than the other backups, but probably a lower floor than the other backups. He still needs a little bit of development, but he's really showed signs of development. So it's unfortunate he's leaving Miami, but they still have 4 quarterbacks left, so they're not going to bring anybody in there. I think it's possible they could look to bring in a wide receiver, and that goes back to the maximizing Ward factor. I think only if they can find somebody who's definitely a starting caliber player. Miami starts 3 receivers. So if they look at someone who they definitely feel like this is better than one of one of our three starters. I doubt anyone's better than Xavier Restrepo who'd be available, but maybe than the other two, they would consider it. I wouldn't consider, because they have depth, young depth. So I wouldn't bring in a receiver unless they really feel like they have a bona fide stud. But with that said, they need defensive backs. I think they're going to look for maybe a cornerback and a safety. I think they could probably use another defensive tackle if they can find a good one. And there's evidence they're looking at edge rushers, because they have brought in Romello Height, who was most recently at USC. Miami brought him in for a visit recently. He says he's going to take a couple more weeks to decide, but I think the Hurricanes are considered to be the front runner there. Miami did lose a defensive end in the portal in Nigel Kelly, who had an excellent true freshman season at Miami 2 years ago. In his sophomore season last year, he was hurt for most of it, but it does look like they want to fill his roster spot with another defensive end. So the places where Miami is good to go, quarterback, tight end, they look good to go right now. I don't think they need an offensive lineman unless somebody really jumps off the page, because we know Mario can be tempted by O-linemen if there's somebody truly special. I don't think they need one, though. And I don't think they need any linebackers, but other than that, I think they'd be pretty open to adding players at various other spots.
Yeah, a guy I talked about earlier in the show, Cormani McLean, the transfer from Colorado, has to be near the top of the wish list. Miami recruited him. He's a Florida native, 5-star recruit. Didn't work out the way he was hoping with the Buffs. And I talked earlier in today's show about how that could certainly be an option there. But back to the all-in mentality and why the portal is at the center of the discussion right now for the Hurricanes. You have 1 year of Cam Ward. And look, there are certainly questions about how consistent he can be and what do you really get from him? How much more can you get out of him? I watched a good amount of that spring game, Alex. Boy, he looked good.
Yeah, he was excellent. And, I've watched at least parts of most of his practices at Miami. The viewing periods for media, it's not the entire practice, so I haven't seen everything. But I thought the spring game was actually like the most I've seen Ward flash. Now, they did have a closed scrimmage the week prior that was closed to media. Some of the VIPs there actually thought that he was also excellent in the scrimmage the previous Saturday. But Ward rarely missed in that spring game, Spencer. And, I know that obviously it's the double-edged sword of what does that say about Miami's defense that he was playing so well. But,
I looked at some of those throws, Alex, and thought, that's just an NFL throw. And when a guy's making NFL throws, I don't care how good your defense is. As long as the quarterback has time, he's going to pick you apart.
Yeah, that's well said. And he looks very comfortable in the offense of Shannon Dawson, Miami's offensive coordinator. It's not a straight up air raid, but there are some air raid principles, and he's familiar with that from Washington State and from Incarnate Word. So it was kind of a quick fit for him. He's put in countless hours learning that offense and building chemistry with his receivers. I mentioned Xavier Restrepo, who was Miami's 1,000-yard receiver last year. Ward and Restrepo, they look to already have kind of a psychic connection. The two of them are always finding each other. Ward is always finding Restrepo, I should say, in practice. So, and I think based on, it's not just the spring game. I think based on the way Ward practiced for 5 weeks at Miami and for what he was doing in the offseason workouts prior to that, I think that goes to that all-in feeling. I think Miami knew that they were getting a good one in Ward. They wouldn't have waited as long as they did to land him if they didn't, prioritize Ward. So they knew they were getting something special. I think he's not only exceeded the fans' expectations, I think he's exceeded the coaches' expectations so far. And that's why they want to go all in to try to win something with him next year.
Momentum in Coral Gables, reported better by none other than Alex Donno, Locked On Canes. Alex, thanks for stopping by as always.
Thank you as always, Spencer.
Alabama. You got to watch for him in the portal. You just do. That's coming up next.